Welcome, everyone, to the KITS Coaching Podcast, Improvement Simplified. My name is Cade Alcock, and I'm here with the venerable, the eminent Jack Kitts. Jack, how are you today?
How's it going, Cade?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. So the topic of today's podcast is training for sports. And today we will address specifically sports-specific training and the threshold of effectiveness for weight training for sport. So let's get right into it. So Jack, when we say sports-specific training, what exactly do we mean by that? Just so it's absolutely unequivocal for our listeners.
Yeah. Generally, when we get questions about sports-specific training, or when we talk about sports-specific training, what I'm referring to is training that isn't the sport. So I'm just going to use a random sport example here. Let's take rugby. So the sport of rugby, that would be like directly specific. Like that is sports specific training, so that is the sports. But sports specific training in the context of what we discuss is like training movement patterns or movements in a loaded way, or maybe conditioning is also kind of sports-specific training. Maybe you're doing some kind of circuit, and that is supposed to be specific to your sport or whatever. One for rugby would be like some kind of rotational ab exercise for like I need to throw this ball, and in order to throw the rugby ball, I kind of twist my hips, and so I'm gonna do that motion in the gym, but I'm gonna have it weighted. So maybe I use a cable and I twist my hips, but I bring the cable with me, and I'm going through that range of motion in a loaded fashion.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about when we talk about sports specific training, and we're making the case that doing things like that is inefficient, and that it isn't building the strength, or it isn't effective for making you a better athlete in your sport.
Right. I think that was well said. Something that I like to talk about are examples of boxing. Rugby obviously is a good one too, and golf. So you see these cable movements in rugby and golf. You see these athletes doing some sort of rotational cable exercise like you just described there. The problem with those rotational exercises is that for golf and for rugby, which are skills obviously in themselves, you're not actually doing that skill. Especially for sports and relative to this example, a golf club is 30, 40 inches long. You're hitting a ball at a very high velocity, and you're in this movement that you're doing or attempting to simulate the golf swing or the rugby pass doesn't actually look anything like the actual skill that you're trying to improve. So let's go through a little flow chart, right? For I have just this little flow chart that I go through in my head when talking about whether you should do a movement to improve at the sport. So number one, is the movement that you hope to do the skill that you hope to improve? So let's use this example in golf, for example. Would doing some sort of cable rotational exercise, is that golfing? Very obviously, no, because golfing involves going out to a golf course and teeing up a ball and using a club to hit the ball and trying to get it into the hole in as few strokes as possible, right? That's clear.
We're not saying that it's like it's a similar movement pattern, but the way that you're going to be doing it isn't the same as a golf swing,
and therefore does not improve your golf swing.
Therefore,
right?
It's not specific to your golf swing. So what's it doing?
Right.
What's the purpose of it?
Right.
So a common response to that might be, oh, you're building strength, and to that again, I would say I don't think you are. I don't think that's helping. I don't think it is getting you stronger, because there's a bunch of other movements that we know do a lot better at getting you stronger. They use more weight. They take you through a bigger range of motion, and they're a compound lift. Some of these are not necessarily single jointed, but they're a little bit. They don't hit as many muscle groups.
They're not
these sports specific movements.
Right.
Yeah, they don't they don't put your body through the same kind of systematic fatigue or stress that
is required for increasing force production.
Yeah.
And you're not even producing a lot of force for this movement.
Right.
And we'll get into how sports and everything ultimately involves force production in a second. So back to the flow chart, right? So using our example of golf, does this cable rotational movement, is it the skill that you hope to improve? No, it is not the skill that you hope to improve. So if you answer no to that, does it build an effective base of strength to better perform the skill? As we just elucidated, no, it doesn't, because it's not producing a lot of force, it's not using a lot of range of motion, and it's not using a lot of musculature, which can help you produce the most force. Yeah. Is it doing nothing?
I don't know.
It's probably doing something. I mean, you're moving, right? But it's just not. It's not the movement, right? And so, what I'm going to do now is talk about things that are going to get you better, right? So, playing golf. Is this the movement / skill that you hope to improve? Yes. Golfing is as specific to golf as possible. So yes, you should practice golf in order to get better at golf. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. Good.
How about the squat? Is it the movement / skill that you hope to improve?
No.
No. Squatting is not golfing. It is not as specific as you can possibly get to that.
Right.
Does squatting build an effective strength base to better perform the skill? Yes. Therefore, you should perform this movement because it takes you through a great range of motion. It uses a great deal of musculature, which is in turn going to help you produce a lot of force and get better at using that force. Yeah. And so some term that we like to use is strength is specific. So do you want to go into a little bit more on that in detail of what we mean when we say strength is specific? Because I think this is a very important point that needs to be driven home in order to understand.
So strength is specific, and it is pretty easy to understand. All sports, all athletics all movements is just some derivative of force production. It involves some component of force production. Throwing a rugby ball, running, biking, swimming, hitting a golf club, hitting a baseball, kicking a soccer ball, shooting a basketball, throwing a football. All of these things require force to complete.
Right.
Strength is specific because the definition of strength is the ability to produce force against an external resistance. All sports are a bunch of external resistances, a bunch of external things that I need to move around. If I can get really strong, then I'm going to get a lot better at moving those things around and producing force against those things through a bunch of ranges of motion. That's what we mean when we say strength is specific, because it's directly specific to every athletics, or every section of athletics. Everything is force production.
And so ultimately, when you're running, that represents some percentage of the force that you can produce.
Yes.
Running a very low.
Yes.
It's low on that percentage scale, right? Because you're opposing.
Yes.
Essentially nothing when you're running.
And with running, there's other considerations like your cardiovascular capacity. And we're not saying that runners should just squat all day.
Right. Of course not.
We're saying that that squats might help runners, and probably will, increase their force production.
Right.
And if you put a runner on a intelligent training program, you get their squat double, triple what it was. That's not too hard, especially for the majority of runners that you see. You double or triple their squat, you've effectively essentially doubled, tripled their force production.
Right. And that's
so and if their recovery or their cardiovascular capacity stayed constant, but their force production and their strength doubled or tripled, you can't tell me that you're not going to be a better runner.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous.
Of course. No, that's a very important point to drive home, and we're by no means, as Jack just said, saying that every single marathon runner should suddenly decide that they're going to compete in a powerlifting meet and squat, 600 pounds at 181. No. We're not saying that. We're not saying you need to even build up all of this amazing musculature that you see on athletes that need to use more force. But we're saying that if everything remains the same, right? If your cardiovascular capacity and your skill of running improves or stays the same and you get stronger, how could you not improve at running, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's
rugby or tennis, whatever you're doing.
Insert sport there, right? Because all of them ultimately, as we have said, represent some form, some percentage of force production.
Yeah.
So something that we get asked a lot, I know I've been asked a lot about in the past is the power clean, right? And how this movement, it's a very, people call it a very functional quote unquote movement. It's a very technical and difficult movement to perform. It uses a great deal of musculature. I just wanted to talk about why wouldn't we power clean, right? When we say we want to get stronger and somebody says, well, why don't we power clean? What do you say to them about that? Because I think that this is a movement that I played football in high school and the power clean was the god of athletic achievement. If you could power clean over a certain weight, you got your name up on the wall and the power clean was all. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm denigrating the power clean, but it was, you would think that this power clean had some sort of spiritual significance in the lives of my football coaches. So anyway, I just want to ask why. So when we talk about strength movements, right? So we say, okay, great, Cade, Jack, strength is specific. That's great. I'm going to power clean.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Are you able to power clean 225 if you can't deadlift 225?
Of course not.
The way we see it is that power cleans, it's not a lot of weight. It's not going to make you very strong. It's more of an explosive movement. To make people strong, it's just not a movement I think is useful. The musculature that you use to power clean is a lot of the posterior chain. You use some of your upper back and your traps. The deadlift hits all those same muscles, with much more weight. So that's why we're not big fans of the power clean for strength. There's an argument to be made about high velocity force production training.
Right.
Before I go into that, I want to just mention the question should athletes train the same, or how should an athlete train when they're first coming into a sport? To answer that, it's pretty complicated because you want to effectively make them stronger, but you don't want to make people powerlifters. You don't want to make people strength athletes. You just want to make them stronger. So it's pretty arbitrary from my point of view as to how strong you need to be to say play college rugby, right? Because I don't know.
Is there some objective measure of strength? I don't think so.
I don't think that and same for the NFL. Frankly, I don't think the NFL coaches care. I don't think they care. The coaches I don't think they care about how much their players squat or how much their players deadlift. They care about how good their players are at football, which is understandable. That would make sense. Why would they care how much they squat if they're being paid? If they're paying them to play football,
right?
Getting LeBron James, getting his squat up, I've got no idea if that's going to make him a better basketball player. But getting a high school basketball player's strength up, I think that could make them a much better basketball player.
Almost invariably.
Yeah. And that goes for... And that's also extended to just anyone who's, relatively weak. I think getting them stronger will just make them better at things that involve force production.
Right.
In general. So.
No, absolutely. That's an important point to drive home, right? Obviously, if LeBron James is the low hanging fruit of the athletic world, right? He's an easy example to use, and I think Jack explained that very well. If LeBron James's squat, were to increase by 10 or 15 pounds, would it make him a better basketball player? Well, he would probably have to use a lot of resources in order to achieve this, because he's probably very advanced or somewhat advanced in his training, and he's very advanced in his basketball training. And so obviously the better you get at something, the more time you have to devote to it. And so he would have to use a lot of resources.
Yeah, like let's say LeBron squats 500 or whatever, it's a good squat. I've seen LeBron squat form. He doesn't have a good squat form. let's just say he's got really good squat form. He squats 500 and it's great and everything. Does getting his squat to 600 make him a better basketball player? It's like the amount of time that he needs to put into getting his squat from 5 to 600 is a lot. And that's a lot of time that he probably isn't playing basketball.
Right.
So does that make him would bringing his squat from 5 to 600 pounds make him a worse basketball player?
Perhaps.
That's a good question. And so yeah.
But would making the college basketball player or even a high school basketball player, would bringing their squat from 200 to 300 pounds make them a better basketball player when they're still when all of the stresses basically that they're absorbing and exposed to at that time are novel, especially or relatively novel, even if as they go into an intermediate level, which is essentially for our purposes they can no longer advance on certain movements within 48 hours. It takes a little bit longer. That's still going to be very effective for them. So that threshold that we're talking about, at what point is improving your squat detrimental, or what point is it totally helpful? We don't exactly know, but we know that force production is involved in everything that we do. And so if you can improve your force production, which is done through movements that use a lot of weight with a great deal of musculature at a great range of motion,
always
will help you get better at your sport, as long as all things remain equal. And so we talk about sports specificity. We don't mean to, we hear a lot from coaches and other players. We hear what if they're not going to be able to play rugby in the off season, or what are they going to do when they're not actually playing the sport? They better get in the gym and do their cable rows, right, or their cable rotational.
One thing that I wonder is what if for someone who's already very strong, what if rotational cable exercises help? I don't know. So the thing the donuts with the baseball players, if you play baseball, you warm up, and it's pretty common to see people put these donuts. It's called a donut. It's just a weighted collar that you put around the bat, and they studied this, and they found that you actually get a negative effect from putting the donut on the bat and warming up with it like that, and which was totally counterintuitive. People for years thought that
they still do.
Yeah,
they still use donuts.
Putting the donut on the bat helps with batting, but it's in the literature. You can look it up. It doesn't help. So, I do wonder, and I don't know if that study was done on MLB players or what level. Maybe it helps MLB players because they're already super advanced. I don't know. Maybe who's a really good rugby player, an insane rugby player, so super strong.
Oh, super strong rugby player. A guy like Kieran Reid for New Zealand is an excellent rugby player.
So
guy, number 8.
Does he squat a lot?
I'm sure.
Maybe doing rotational exercise for him. I don't know. Maybe that's
maybe
helpful.
On the margin.
Maybe not with a cable, but maybe with a weighted rugby ball. I don't know.
Who knows? But then again, it gets back to the point of if you throw a weighted rugby ball, that's not very specific to the movement.
That's true.
Because the movement pattern is going to be very different to throwing a regular rugby ball.
So these are just things that I wonder, because training is a process, right? There's no discrete answer really for any step along the way. The advanced lifters need a lot more training complexity that frankly hasn't even been studied. There aren't many studies on advanced lifters because I don't know, they're hard to find. There's not a lot of advanced lifters around. Having more research on specifically advanced lifters would be really cool.
And I think that what you said there is very hits on the point, right? The majority of people aren't advanced lifters.
Right.
And yet they worry at length about things that they
minutia.
should not
Yes.
be worried about. They're
Yes.
missing the forest
The
for the
99%.
trees,
Yep.
right? They're missing what they should really be concerned about, which is getting stronger and getting
Yeah.
better at their sport, which
Yeah.
you can do by squatting, deadlifting, and pressing
Yeah.
and bench pressing
Yeah.
and playing your sport.
Yeah.
And yet they're worried about whether I should be going into the gym balancing on a Bosu ball and holding a medicine ball. These are real exercises that I've seen, by the way, and that I have also performed in the past. Standing on a Bosu ball with a medicine ball and turning sideways as though to somehow simulate a rotational movement that you would see in hockey, which is a sport that I've played in the past. And so what I should have been worried about, and what the majority of people, even in professional sports, should be concerned about, is getting stronger
Yeah.
and getting better at their sport,
Yes.
which is done by squatting, bench pressing, deadlifting, and pressing as, we periodize.
Yes.
And then playing those sports.
Yes.
And so I think that is an excellent way to wrap up.
Yes.
Wrap up.
A lot of this, we should just to add, a lot of this applies to all of it applies to conditioning as well.
Right.
I think, getting better at conditioning can be taken care of outside the gym or in a different session. Mm-hmm. Even if you do a circuit in the gym for your conditioning workout, if that's not your strength training, cool.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we don't bring barbells out on the field.
Yeah.
So why would we bring basketballs and hockey pucks and
Yeah.
sticks into the gym?
Right.
You wouldn't do that. It
Right.
just makes intuitive sense.
Right.
Well, anyway, I think that's about all we have on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully we elucidated and explained for our listeners here about sports specific training and the utility of strength training for sports athletes.
Yes.
And I am very excited for the podcast that we have coming in the future. So please stay tuned, everybody. This was the Kids Coaching Podcast. So signing off is Kate Alcock.
And I'm Jack Hitz.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This is the Kids Coaching Podcast, Improvement Simplified.